Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 32 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You know you missed him last week. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'm happy to be back. I am quite busy as of late, so I'm happy to put that aside and talk some football. Even though we don't have an Eagles game to preview, we've got some stuff to talk about, or a game to review, I should say. We've got some stuff to talk about that impacts the Eagles' chances in the playoffs. Some positive, some negative. So we'll get into all that.
Yeah, I've got some takes to drop on today's show, and so I'm excited to get into it. I'm excited to talk some football with Mark. It's been a week, or it's been 2 weeks, or a week and a half. So ready to get back into it. We have a great show lined up for you guys. We're going to review every Week 14 game, which sadly does not include an Eagles game. But before we get to that, this podcast is live on Apple Podcasts. So please follow, rate, review, drop us some comments here if you're watching live. I do want to show off my Eagles gear. I had a Christmas party with my students today, and I'm still wearing my ugly Christmas sweater, my Eagles sweater. And I've got my Eagles stocking hat on. Unfortunately, if I turn the lights on, it screws everything up. So we're not going to be turning the lights on. And in fact, I'm going to be taking that off because I'm about to roast here in my office. So anyways, let's get into it here. A lot of stuff to talk about. Let's start off. We'll just go with them in order here. Let's start with the Thursday night game. It was Dallas traveling to Washington to take on the football team. A huge game here for the Eagles' playoff chances.
Wait, that was Sunday game.
Was that the Sunday? What was the Thursday game?
Thursday. What was Thursday? No, that was definitely Sunday at 1:00. But Thursday was. Well, this isn't great. This isn't great radio. But last Thursday's game.
No. It was Steelers Vikings.
Vikings. Yeah.
Steelers Vikings. And I didn't put it on my preview show agenda because I did the preview Friday afternoon. And then I went through and just erased my preview show stuff and I put in notes about the games. So that is why I didn't even have it on here. I did not watch this game. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even go back and look at it because I didn't have it on my list. So Mark, what takes do you have for us from this game?
Vikings Steelers was crazy. Vikings went up huge. They were up, I don't even know what, 3-4 touchdowns at halftime. The Steelers ended up coming back, driving down the field at the end of the game. They got to the 10-yard line and had one chance at the end to throw a touchdown, to have a chance to tie it up with a 2-point conversion. And Pat Freiermuth dropped it on a big hit by Harrison Smith, Notre Dame legend. So that was a good play. Also, probably the biggest moment from the game, also involved a Notre Dame player, but it's negative. Chase Claypool got a catch on 4th down with about 30 seconds left. And instead of rushing to the line to clock the ball, because the Steelers didn't have any timeouts, he instead celebrated the first down. And then yelled at one of his teammates for trying to get the ball from him. And then that caused the ball to kind of go out of his hands and go all the way to the other side, wasted like 5-6 seconds. So yeah, not a great moment for a former Notre Dame player. But Chase Claypool definitely cost them at least probably another play.
Yeah, you gotta love that Kirk Cousins stat line: 14 of 31 for 216 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Another, great Kirk Cousins game. Dalvin Cook goes off in that game, 205 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. If I'm not mistaken, didn't one of the Minnesota players knock the ball out of Claypool's hands like during that whole thing, kind of slapped it away to drain some more clock?
Yeah, he blamed a teammate for trying to grab it from him. And he seems like it's so funny because at college, Chase Claypool did not seem like someone I thought was going to be a diva, but man, he's having problems with everyone there in Pittsburgh. He had the whole thing with the Browns on TikTok last year or whatever, and then Tomlin he's yelling at for not playing music at practice, and now he's blaming his teammates for that thing that he's getting killed for. So yeah, not a great look for Chase Claypool.
Sounds like Antonio Brown. a little bit.
Or Juju a little
Yeah.
bit.
What is it with
bad.
Steelers receivers, Steelers players in general? I will say, I mean, in his defense, and it's indefensible, but if you were going to try, this is what, his second year in the league. And in college, that clock stops till the ball gets reset. So you'd actually be buying yourself a little bit of time to get your team lined up. So, I mean, I'm not saying he was thinking that. I'm sure he wasn't thinking at all. But yeah, you can't make that mistake at an NFL level. That's up there on par with not knowing a game can end in a tie. So shout out to Donovan McNabb for that one.
And Najee Harris. Every year, every time there's a tie, it happens. It's crazy.
Okay, so that's our Thursday night game. Now on to the good stuff, on to Sunday. So this is the game I wanted to talk about. Dallas at Washington. I knew I didn't watch this game that long ago, to last Thursday, but so Dallas wins this game 27-20 in a game that looked out of sight at halftime. You would be forgiven if you turned this off at halftime when Dallas was up 24-0. They were outscored 20-3 in the second half, and they barely hang on and win the game. Dak gets intercepted 2 times, including a pick six. And I mean, it was kind of a rough second half for the Dallas offense. What'd you take away from this game?
And neither of these teams are all that good. Is really what you could take away. Because when Washington got down so big early and they just had no answer, Taylor Heineke was 2 for 10. The offensive line wasn't blocking. They couldn't run the ball. There was just nothing that could go right for Washington for a long stretch of time in this game. But then Dallas couldn't step on their throat and kind of finish the game off, and they let them back in. And Dak, the one pick he threw, the pick six he threw, that really kind of gave Washington some life. That's an indefensible throw. Like, that is a throw that someone that, if you think they're a top 5 to 10 quarterback, they should not be making a throw like that. So, and Dak had a play where the old Dak Prescott would have ran for 10 to 15 yards and gotten a first down. And he basically tripped on himself 2 to 3 yards up the field. And it stopped what would have been a first down. I think it was on third down as well. And that's just something, I don't know if that's the calf injury or if that's just something that's been lost in Dak's game. But if Dak's not mobile and Dak doesn't have that ability to escape the pocket when he has to, that really takes a lot of juice out of that Dallas offense and a lot of juice out of what Dak brings as a top tier quarterback.
Yeah, when I did QB tier rankings last week, and I put Dak at near the top of my tier rankings, and I acknowledged the fact his mobility has been gone, but he's been doing well, still just throwing the ball from the pocket. But you definitely saw some chinks in the armor this game. It wasn't his cleanest game. Granted, it was against a Washington team that's been playing well defensively.
Somehow without their good players.
Yeah. Dallas is down both offensive tackles at one point in this game, but Dallas goes, I think they had 6 red zone trips and they only came out of it with 1 touchdown. Your boy Heineke was really bad. Then he leaves injured in the fourth quarter. But this was just a war of attrition. The Washington football team's down Terry McLaurin, J.D. McKissick, Logan Thomas. Their top 3 defensive ends weren't playing in this game. It's just brutal. And I mean, it shapes up well not to get ahead to the preview show, but it shapes up well for the Eagles that they're going to come off their bye and go into a game against Washington, who is so beat up.
Well, yeah, we'll see if they can even play that game.
Yeah,
with the COVID outbreak going on with Washington, but yeah, Heineke played terrible. But even in that terrible performance, he had that play where he escapes out of the pocket and uncorks one 40, 50 yards to the end zone. And Sims makes that catch, get one of the best catches of the year. I feel like I didn't see a lot of people talking about that catch, but that was incredible. So I think that, even in a bad game, you saw a glimpse of like, oh, that's why you get excited about Heineke. So
let's look at what this did for the NFC playoff picture. So, I mean, obviously Dallas wins. They're pretty much locked into this 4 spot. I don't see any way they're catching Arizona or Tampa Bay or any of these teams. They're not catching any of these teams for the 1 seed or the 2-3 seed, I don't think. Right now it shows, if the season ended today, Washington is in over the Eagles on virtue of a tiebreaker, but they are tied record-wise, and the Vikings are right there as well, along with half the NFC, because that's pretty much where we're at. But we've talked about on this show before, we've broken down at length that we're both pretty confident the 49ers will be in. and that it's going to come down to these Washington and Philadelphia games. And an interesting stat here, I think Jimmy Kempski dug this up. I can't remember where I saw it, but I couldn't find the tweet again, so I went to look up the actual numbers. There is a point differential of 104 between Washington and Philadelphia this year. Washington's point differential is negative 58, and Philadelphia's is positive 46. And so although their records are the same, Philadelphia's played better football this year. And I think Philadelphia fans should feel pretty good about this matchup against Washington next week. Not to get too far ahead to our preview.
No, the Eagles are that was a great stat, and it made me feel a lot better about our chances going forward. And we have a 104 points better point differential. It is from Jimmy Kempski, and we're plus 46, while Washington is a minus 58. So that is truly a wild stat. And then if you just look at according to 538, this is from Brendan Deeg, a good follow at Brendan Deeg NFP. Interviewed him on Everything's Fine. He's a good dude. According to 538, the Eagles have the best chance to make the playoffs out of all 6 and 7 teams in the NFC. Basically, they have the best chance to get that 7 seed at 37%. The Vikings are at 29%, Washington at 27%, the Saints at 19%, and the Falcons at 12%. So that means we have an 8% better chance than anyone else has. And I'm starting to feel that way. And I'm also starting to feel like maybe it's going to come down to us or Minnesota. I'm really starting to count Washington out because we beat them. If we beat them this week and then they play Dallas again, who really, I think that'll be one of the last games that Dallas really cares in. That'll kind of lock up the division. You'll be able to clinch probably in that game. So I think Dallas takes care of Washington. And then if Washington is sitting there at 6-9, their season's by all intents and purposes over. So I do think it'll come down to us and the Vikings because I don't buy into the Saints or the Falcons, which we'll get to them in our reviews. But I'm starting to think Eagles or Vikings for that 7th seed, and I got to tell you, I'm feeling pretty good.
And I mentioned this on the preview show, but would you like to riff on the stupidity that is the NFL scheduling, making Washington play Dallas, Philadelphia, Dallas, Philadelphia? Like, that's just absurd. I hate the whole play of the same team twice in 3 weeks. It's even worse when you've got, 2 of those sandwich. It's just absurd. Like, I would love to see the NFL schedule, like, every year weeks 1 through 3 are division games, and then weeks 16 through 18 are division games or something. I mean, like, I hate that schedules play out like that.
How about Cleveland? They played Baltimore. They went on bye, and then they played Baltimore in the last 3 weeks. That was insane. Yeah,
that's just awful. But anyways, all right. Let's
and before we get too sidetracked, that's a competitive disadvantage for Baltimore. Also, that's just in general that the fact that Cleveland got to sit a week off while Baltimore had to go play a game and they got to prepare for the opponent they just faced again. That's a huge advantage to Cleveland and something that I kind of ignored when previewing that game.
Yeah, absolutely. So schedule makers, get your act together. Let us make the schedule for you. We'll get all this stuff figured out. And we'll get Dallas off of home games on Thanksgiving too. All right. Got that out of my system. Let's move on. Jacksonville traveled to Tennessee. Tennessee gets the win 20-0. Trevor Lawrence is intercepted 4 times in this loss. I wonder, do you think Urban Meyer called him a loser in the locker room after the game?
I think it's a tremendous strategy that when anyone disagrees with you or anytime things get tough around you, to just let everyone know involved in the situation that I'm a winner. You guys are all the losers. Like, you guys are the ones screwing the situation up with your loser energy. I think it's a foolproof strategy by Urban Meyer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, although, if your assistant coaches are all losers, maybe you're a loser because you put the staff together. And he's talking about making them defend their resumes. Here's a HR tip for the day for those of you out there. If you're hiring people, maybe check their resumes before you hire them. Like, you're responsible for this team. And I honestly feel like Urban Meyer's just trying to get fired at this point. Like, he's just here's the thing. Okay. So, and I don't even have a note about the Titans in this game because I don't care, but Trevor Lawrence is like the golden child, right? Golden child never says anything in the media, never has. Granted, things were pretty good for him at Clemson, But he comes out in the media after James Robinson is effectively benched for fumbling the game before. He comes out and he says that he wants Robinson on the field because he's the best offensive player that we have. Robinson got 6 carries in this game. Like, if you were the head coach, how are you not listening to your first round, number 1 overall quarterback? How are you not giving this guy a say in the personnel he wants to see on the field? Like, if your ownership at this point, you're choosing between Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer right now, and that is no decision. Urban Meyer needs to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that it says a lot about someone in a position of power in any walk of life about how they treat people on their way up. And I think you can see how Urban Meyer is treating his assistants, and you can see how his former assistants feel about him, because this video that I'm about to pull up, Mike Vrabel, the Titans head coach, was a former Ohio State assistant of Urban Meyer's. And clearly there's some bad blood there. That is an icy handshake right there between 2 Ohio State men, 2 Buckeyes right there. And yeah, apparently Vrabel is not a fan of Urban Meyer. Yeah, if you're Shad Khan, if you're the Jaguars, if you have any respect for themselves, which they don't, the Khan family does not have any respect for the Jaguars, the city of Jacksonville, the fans of the Jaguars, all 12 of them. If they had any dignity and if they had any respect, they would fire Urban Meyer today. The fact that Urban Meyer lasted through Monday and now it's Tuesday, the fact that he lasted after that game, after that handshake, after his body language on the sideline of all game where he looked like he didn't care at all, it's a joke. Urban Meyer should have been fired on Sunday night.
And this is important. Like, you've got games left here. A rookie quarterback who's had most of his rookie season wasted. You've got games here that you can try to make strides. You can try to get this guy some actual reps. You can try to help him out, help that development, and they're just throwing it away, and that's unforgivable. He's got to go. This is worse than what the Bears are doing with keeping Matt Nagy, and we're going to talk about him too. But like, this is even worse because this is even more blatant.
It's so much worse. What he's doing is so inexcusable. It's one of the worst performances I've seen as a head coach in general. And yeah, I think, I'm sure he'll get brought up for other jobs. This is the landing spot for Doug Peterson. If you bring in just an NFL operation, with the culture that he'd instill there and anywhere. He might not be a perfect coach. He might not be the greatest play caller, and he might have, his warts. There's definitely problems with Doug Peterson. Maybe he learned from them at the end of his tenure, and he learned from what kind of led him astray a little bit. But a lot of those things weren't his fault either. So I think this is a perfect landing spot, because I don't think that it's as bad as it seems right now. I don't think the roster and the potential with the picks that they'll have next year, I don't think that the roster next year that Doug Peterson would have if he got this job is as bad as it looks right now.
Yeah, and I mean, number one priority is developing Trevor Lawrence. You know who's great with quarterbacks? Doug Peterson. Like, he's a perfect fit. Great culture. Players love him. You might not go win a Super Bowl hiring Doug Peterson there.
You might
eventually. I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's some top NFL coach, but I think the fit is perfect there for him to go to Jacksonville.
He did it in year 2 here.
Yeah.
Out of a rebuild.
Yeah. All right, let's roll on. Seattle travels to Houston in another game that I don't have a lot to say about just because of who's playing here, but Seattle wins 33-13. Russell Wilson's starting to look better. Maybe he's getting healthy. The run game is picking up for the Seahawks, but at the end of the day, it's against Houston. And playing Houston, the Seattle defense allowed Davis Mills to complete 14 straight passes. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. This team, they have, I think, a 3% shot to make the playoffs according to 538. It's not that is too high. There is a 0% chance that Seattle can get to the playoffs here.
I agree. I actually had Texans team total under 16.5 in this game. They scored 13 in the first half, and they kicked a 61-yard field goal at the end of the half. So I was like, oh my, that's gonna screw me there. That's what's gonna end up putting this over. They didn't score in the second half, so I ended up cashing it. So I am a little thankful for the Seahawks defense tightening up after making Davis Mills look like the next coming of Tom Brady there in the first quarter of that game. But I don't have much to say about the game. I will just say, and if you can't tell with them that Doug Peterson point, I randomly the other day was just sitting around thinking about coaching vacancies and thinking about like the top candidates. I'm a huge head coach carousel guy in the NFL. I find it fascinating. So that's like one of my favorite weeks in the NFL. It's wild card week and then division week. Like you get obviously the news about those games and you get the news about who's getting fired, who's getting interviewed for these jobs. It's always so interesting to me. These are two jobs that could absolutely be open or could maybe it's crazy to even suggest that because it does feel like this Seattle era, it kind of has to come to an end. It seems like this is it for Pete Carroll, but there's a power vacuum in Seattle where he's kind of the most powerful guy in the organization. And he's the one making a lot of the calls in the draft and personnel wise. So maybe is he going to fire himself? I don't know. And it seems like David Culley might have been hired to be fired.
Yeah. Speaking of, also, the Jaguars, if they don't want Doug Peterson, they should get on the phone with Joe Brady. Bring that guy in. Just saying.
I made my list. Maybe this is a good little quick segment since we don't have a lot to talk about with the Eagles here. I made my list, my top 10 head coaching candidates for next year. If you want to add anyone or if you want to critique them, I'll run through it real quick. I put it in 3 tiers. My top tier, this is like the top 4 guys that I would really get excited about if I was a team looking for a head coach. I put Doug Peterson 1. I put Joe Brady 2, which is surprising. He just got fired from an offensive coordinator job. I don't care. I still believe in him. I agree with you completely. What happened to Carolina is all because of the fact that they couldn't figure out their quarterback position, and they grossly mismanaged that as a franchise. So Joe Brady, I think he will get a head coaching job too. I think I don't think NFL teams are that dumb. He's a genius. I'd put Josh McDaniels in there. I'm a McDaniels guy. I know that, is he ever going to leave? He's a mercurial guy. He's definitely a different kind of guy. But I think the results speak for themselves with Josh McDaniels, and I trust the infrastructure of what he would bring from the Patriots. I put Bieniemy 4th in that tier. I think he's another guy who just deserves a chance at this point. So any of those 4 guys I think are slam dunk home run hires. I put these next 2 guys in like a tier of exciting young guys that feel way too recent of players to be coaches, and Kellen Moore and Byron Lethwitch. It's both crazy to me that both those guys are going to be head coaches now. Like I remember them in Madden still very vividly. So the fact that they'll both be out there, but Kellen Moore, what he's done for Dallas for a while now is pretty impressive. And it's going to be funny if Dallas has to let Kellen Moore go be the head coach elsewhere while they ride with Mike McCarthy. That'd be a pretty funny decision for Dallas to have to make. And then Byron Lethwitch is a guy who seems like maybe he's a savant. Maybe that's kind of how he got by in his career and just IQ wise. And it seems like he has helped Tom Brady. And he helped Jameis Winston put up insane numbers too. I mean, Jameis Winston did throw a lot of picks, but people forget he had like 30 plus touchdowns and 5,000 yards. And that offense put up big points. I think they went like 7-9 or 8-8 with a team that had 30 picks. So Byron Lethwich is a guy that's exciting. And then this last tier is just guys that wouldn't excite me much, but I wouldn't be surprised if they turned out to be good head coaches. Brian Daboll from Buffalo, Scott Turner from Washington, Greg Roman from Baltimore, and Wink Martindale from Baltimore. Those would be like the 10 names that I looked at. I don't know if there's anyone that I missed.
I would throw, not maybe for a head coaching job, but Gerard Mayo, the linebacker coach for the Patriots. I know the Eagles interviewed him in the offseason last year for their head coaching job, and they came away. They said they were impressed by him. I know Bill Belichick has praised him, and Bill Belichick doesn't praise a lot of people. So I could see him, maybe not straight. I mean, probably not straight to a head coach, but I could see him getting a DC job somewhere, maybe in Philadelphia. Wink, wink. And then going down to the college ranks, Matt Campbell from Iowa State. I could see him maybe trying to make a jump. I know he's had offers before, and he kind of wanted to stay at Iowa State and build something there. He's got to realize Iowa State's as good as they're ever going to get.
Can I give you a piping hot Matt Campbell take?
All right.
The guy's a big fat phony. That guy's a fraud. I'm not a Matt Campbell guy. That team this year they were ranked number 5 coming into the year. They were supposed to be this big bad program. Iowa State's changing the culture. They went 7-5. He's out there crying on senior day and blubbering. He's a phony media creation, in my opinion. He was up for the Notre Dame job, as you know. If anyone is listening that doesn't know, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I was terrified that Notre Dame was going to hire Matt Campbell. So Matt Campbell is someone I would stay far away from. I
don't want him. I've been kind of ruined on the top college coach making the jump to the NFL, Chip Kelly, cough, cough. But I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody take a shot there.
The name that I did think of after I made the list college-wise was Ryan Day. That was kind of the name that came to my head. Ohio State quarterback guy, offense guy. He would probably be the top name from college that has. I mean, Lincoln Riley is probably the top name from college that would have a chance to
say NFL. His name.
Yeah. But obviously he's locked in somewhere now. Saban's not going to the NFL. Dabo's not going to the NFL. Although I did hear, what if Jacksonville threw $15 million at Dabo to come be their coach, and I'm like, oh my God, you're Jacksonville, you can't go back to college and go get the other college coach who has never thought about being an NFL coach.
You can if you just drafted his quarterback.
Exactly. That it might be that simple. How funny would it be though if they go and give another college coach big money to come be there?
And they drafted Travis Etienne too. They're 2 first-round picks, Clemson guys.
They're going to draft the middle linebacker that played like 1 million games there for the last decade, Skalski. Oh, my God. It's so funny.
Another guy you could throw out there, and I don't think he'll get a job, but if you wanted a defensive head coach, which most teams don't anymore, but Todd Bowles is always going to be a name out there with what he's done in Tampa. But I just think, defensive-minded head coaches are kind of becoming a dying thing, and so I don't think somebody makes that move. But
yeah, the tough thing about that is, and there, Brandon Staley got hired, so there has been some defensive coaches hired. But if they do get hired, it's almost like they want their first head coaching job to be with them. Like these retread guys, like Todd Bowles, who's had a head coaching job. Dennis Allen. The Saints defensive coordinator, he had a head coaching job with the Raiders way back. I feel like those guys getting that chance and then blowing it once you have that head coaching job and get fired without any success, it's kind of hard to get that second one. Unlike the NBA, you'll see in the NBA, head coaches, they'll fail 3 places and then get another head coaching job, like Mike D'Antoni or like a lot of other guys. In the NFL, it's kind of hard to keep getting these jobs unless you're Hugh Jackson,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll on here through our slate.
I thought that was a fun conversation. That was a fun detour.
Yeah. We've talked QB tiers and we've talked coaching tiers now. So we'll
have to do a full head coaching ranking after the year or something.
You never know what kind of tiers you're going to get from this show, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot as we get into the off season. So
for sure.
All right. The Las Vegas Raiders travel to Arrowhead, and they get embarrassed by the Chiefs. Chiefs win this game 48-9. The Chiefs now play the Chargers on Thursday night, and so that is a huge game, probably determines who wins that division. It's nice for them to have an easy game Sunday, pulling their starters in the second half en route to a 6th straight win. So if the Chiefs win out, they would be 13-4, and they could claim the 1 seed if the Titans and the Patriots each lose a game. Are the Chiefs for real? Are they going to make a push for that number 1 seed?
Yeah, for sure. I think you can book the tickets. I don't know if it's to Foxborough or if it's to Kansas City, but I think Chiefs Patriots is the AFC Championship. I think you can book that right now. I feel extremely confident saying that, as long as they're not the 2 and the 3 seed and have to face off in the second round. I should say the winner of Patriots Chiefs in the playoffs, when they inevitably match up, the winner of that matchup will go to the Super Bowl and represent the AFC. I think the Chiefs are very real. And the reason that they're real is not because of the offense getting back on track and putting up 48 points. The reason that they're realer than ever is because their defense is legitimately pretty good. What we've always said, all the Chiefs need to do is have a below average defense, or even bad. It just can't be terrible. That's what we always said. You have to keep it out of that bottom 10, out of that bottom 7, bottom 5 of the league defensively. But what happens if they're top 15, maybe even top 10, fringe top 10? That would be a huge development in terms of their Super Bowl chances.
Yeah, the Raiders are done. They were 5-2. They're now 6-7, losing 5 of their last 6. And just the latest entry in their annual choke job masterpiece. I'm not sold on the Chiefs' offense yet, which sounds crazy after they just put up 48 points. But I can be sold on them if they go and do this to the Chargers. Here's the reality. The Chiefs' point differential is 1.3 points per game this season when not playing the Raiders. It's plus 33 per game against the Raiders. They've only had 2 great offensive games, and they were both against the Raiders. So let me ask you,
I don't think that's fair.
Let me ask you this. What coverage shell, what kind of defense do you need to play against the Chiefs to try to slow them down?
Oh, well, they're too high.
Yeah. You know what you know what the Las Vegas Raiders are absolutely committed to doing?
Not
playing single high safety cover 3 all day. Like it's like we went back to Mahomes 2 years ago when nobody could stop him and everybody was playing cover 3, and people finally figured out, hey, to slow it down, we need to go split field. We need to keep safeties over the top. That's how you slow this offense down. And everyone's done it all season. And the Raiders are like, you know what? Let's hop in a time machine and take Mahomes back to 2 years ago when nobody had any clue how to play this guy. And that's what the Raiders do. So I'm not saying the Chiefs aren't going to go places, but I need to see their offense do it against a team that's not the Raiders. And they get a shot on Thursday night in a huge divisional game.
I will say they put up 33 on the Browns, 36 on the Ravens, and 42 on the Eagles. But that was all really early in the year. That was all the first 4 or 5 months, or first 4 or 5 weeks of the year. So that I think this Chiefs offense was perfectly intact until whatever happened to them against Tennessee. They had that one weird game against Buffalo, and they lost close games to the Chargers and Ravens. I never freaked out about that. When they were sitting at 3-3 after the first 6 weeks, I thought they were perfectly fine, and they were averaging somewhere in the range of 30 plus points per game at that point. But then once you lost to the Titans, that was a 27-3 drubbing. And then they had that ugly 20-17 win over the Giants, that ugly 13-7 win against the Packers. And then they started to get right with that Raiders game, and then they played some ugly wins again. So it's funny that like when I felt the worst about them was the start of this win streak that they're currently on. But I think the Chiefs are. I have no concerns really. I think they're going to be really good, and the fact that now they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of going better than he ever has in the NFL, and Damian Williams. It's funny, Darrell Williams. Damian Williams is Chicago now, but Darrell Williams. Out there, they have 2 running backs really producing in the passing game and in the running game. So I think that's huge, especially for this upcoming matchup against the Chargers, who can't stop the run.
Yeah, and that's going to be a huge game. I can't wait to watch that one.
I love the Chiefs just because I don't think the preview will probably be after that game. So just guessing, but the preview will probably be on Thursday night after that game or on Friday. So let me just say Chiefs -3 will be on my card on Thursday for sure.
All right. Let's roll on. New Orleans travels to the Meadowlands to take on the Jets. They win 30-9. Alvin Kamara, welcome back to the NFL. He gets 145 yards and a touchdown. Zach Wilson goes 19 for 42 passing for 202 yards, but 116 of those yards came in the fourth quarter when the game was already over. And so Zach Wilson continues to struggle, but Alvin Kamara boosts. Well, I don't know so much if Alvin Kamara boosted the Saints offense or playing the Jets boosted the Saints offense, but either way, the result's the same. New Orleans comes out on top.
Let me just, I don't have much to say about the game. Yeah, I agree. I think it's half Alvin Kamara and then half playing the New York Jets, as we saw with Minshew Mania running wild. which, by the way, doesn't that still feel like, now that we're like 2 weeks removed from that now, it's like, was that real? Was that like a real thing that happened, or was that just like
so long ago?
Was that a fever dream? And now Gardner Minshew's out there hunting with Lane Johnson. I saw you rubbing your mustache. It's like a mental reaction once Gardner Minshew's brought up.
I'm gonna shave all this off and just keep the mustache.
But I will say this is an ode to Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is now starting for me in multiple fantasy leagues going into the fantasy football playoffs. Taysom Hill has made 6 career starts for the Saints at quarterback. He's finished as a top 8 fantasy quarterback in 4 of those games and never worse than QB 13 for that week. It's the same thing with Jalen Hurts and why Jalen Hurts is a top 3 fantasy quarterback and why Tim Tebow way back was like a good fantasy quarterback when he was playing. When you are able to I know this isn't a fantasy football podcast, but when you're able to run the ball, you can be a good fantasy quarterback even when you play terribly. He threw 4 picks against Dallas, right? I believe Taysom Hill threw 4 picks in that game. He put up 25 fantasy points because he was running around with his legs. I think he got a 50-yard rushing touchdown at the end of this game. That was completely garbage time. That was a huge thing for me in a fantasy football matchup. So shout out to Taysom Hill.
Yeah, that's better than starting Derek Carr like I did. So I had Derek Carr for a whole 10 fantasy points against the Chiefs.
You're on a bye.
This last week I started Derek Carr, who got 10 points. I started Hilliard, the running back for Tennessee, because I have no running backs left, and he had 13 yards. And then I started Adam Thielen, and he gets knocked out like right away. It was a terrible week for me, but I managed to eke out a 1-point win thanks to Leonard Fournette.
I will say, if anyone wants to question the knowledge of the 2 people you're seeing on this screen right now, the Painted Lines had a 12-person fantasy football draft. Shane didn't make it. Shane got a bad team drafted for him. He was able to maneuver his way to whatever his record was, 9-5, I think. And he got a bye in his division, won his division. I went 11-3. I got a bye, came in first place and won my division. Me and Shane are off for the week in the Painted Lines. We have a bye. So second place in the Painted Lines fantasy football league right here on the screen.
Let me tell you a little bit about my luck in the draft. Travis Etienne, one of my draft picks. My second running back, Gus Edwards, been on IR all year after I lost my top 2 running backs before the season even started. Just awful. And somehow I've managed to make it without having a quarterback and only having one running back that's worth anything. And I don't know how I did it.
That league's wild. All 6 teams that made the playoffs have 9 or more wins. There's like 3 11-3 teams or something like that. Crazy league. It'll be fun playoffs. I'll try to update the Painted Lines people as we move along.
Yeah. All right, let's dive back in here. We've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta wins 29-21. So I don't know. Maybe Joe Brady wasn't the problem. Atlanta has over 100 yards rushing in 3 straight games, the first time since 2018. Meanwhile, Carolina is not a playoff team. Cam Newton is not a quarterback for the Panthers moving forward, and Matt Rule has got to go. That's where I'm at after this game.
Where I'm at after this game right now, and this is just a brief look into my psychosis, everyone out there. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw my gambling picks for today. My one pick was Alabama team total over 78.5 in college basketball. There is a minute left in that game, and they have 78 points. If you ever doubted that Las Vegas knows what they're doing, they do. But they didn't in this game. Weird segue. I had to announce that because I'm currently watching a game cast on if Alabama's going to score another damn point in this game. But the Falcons +3 was one of my big bets this week. How did Vegas look themselves in the mirror and make the Carolina Panthers a 3-point favorite in any game against anyone? I don't know who they'd be 3 points better than right now. This Panthers operation is a joke. Matt Rule is a total fraud. Matt Rule is Matt Campbell. I think they're the exact same person. I think Matt Campbell would come to the NFL and do the exact same stuff while everyone talked about how great they are. And no one is giving Matt Rule the grief that he should be getting, in my opinion.
There were Oklahoma fans that wanted Matt Rule when that was talk on sports radio here that Matt Rule was going to come. And I was like, absolutely not. I've been dogging this guy all year, which, I mean, great. You could be a good college coach and not be a good NFL coach. It happened to Nick Saban, but I was like, please do not bring Matt Rule to Norman.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been a terrible fit. I mean, this isn't a college football podcast, but I love what Oklahoma did. They brought in Brent Venables. You get a little tougher defensively. You bring in Levy from Ole Miss, so hopefully you keep that that run and gun mentality. You bring in a little Lane Kiffin, offensive influence. I love what's going on in Norman.
Yeah. All right, Baltimore at Cleveland. This was another crazy game. Cleveland wins 24-22. They nearly blow a 21-point lead. They get a 4th down stop to end this game. Since week 5, the Browns have only surpassed 17 points one time, if you don't count this week, and they needed a defensive score to do it this week. So Browns offense is a complete disaster right now. Let me ask you this question. As Lamar Jackson goes down with an injury, Tyler Huntley, he's been impressive as a backup. Is Tyler Huntley a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield right now?
Yes, he's a better quarterback. He's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Tyler Huntley, I'm going to have his jersey hanging behind me on the next Chalk Talk. This was my game of the year. If anyone follows me on Twitter, by the way, Alabama did not score. I just lost that point. I just lost that bet by a half of a point. 10 times to me this month. Whatever. I'll get past it as a professional. But this was my game of the year. The Ravens +3. So they go down 10-0. They didn't look good with Lamar. Lamar gets hurt. They go down 24-3 at one point in this game, 24-6, and it's 24-9 going into the fourth quarter, or close to the fourth quarter. I was it was not looking like it was going to be a good Sunday for me. And then Tyler Huntley, just, man, what a drive down the field for that cover. Good teams win, great teams cover. And what Tyler Huntley was able to do, getting them back in the game. And then they get the onside kick. With got a chance to win the game again at the end. That game told us a lot about the Cleveland Browns, I think. The fact that Cleveland let Baltimore come back in that game was like, how are you letting this happen? Like that was, and it was Baker. The answer to how are they letting this happen is Baker Mayfield.
Cleveland fans won't want to hear it because they started the year with such high hopes. The best thing that could happen for that franchise is happening right now, because this is giving Cleveland an out to not pay Baker Mayfield, something that we've said all along they shouldn't do, but they were kind of backed into a corner. Long term, this team imploding and it being on Baker Mayfield, that's going to be the best thing I think that could happen for this franchise.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the best thing that can happen for their current playoff chances is Lamar Jackson being hurt.
Yeah,
I guess so. Cleveland could win this division. I think they're currently the odds-on favorite. I could be wrong.
Baltimore has Green Bay, Cincinnati, the Rams, and Pittsburgh left, and now Lamar has a low ankle sprain, which is going to linger. Although Tyler Huntley just led the Ravens to their first 20-plus point game in over a month, so maybe they're in fine hands. I will hear no Lamar Jackson slander, but Huntley's been impressive as a backup.
He's been a preseason legend for a while now too. So Huntley did win them a game earlier on this year. He didn't look great doing it, but he did win a game against Chicago. So who do they play next week? Is it Pittsburgh? No, they play Green Bay. They play Green Bay.
Yeah, Ravens play Green Bay.
That's a tough matchup for Tyler Huntley.
Yeah.
But you toss him out there, I guess. You can't rush Lamar back. I mean, you got to let him, because it's the same thing with Jalen Hurts. If they're not able to kind of be who they are in terms of running the ball and that being something that the defense has to account for, there's really no point in having them out there.
Yeah. Okay, New York Giants travel to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. They lose 37-21. The Chargers need to get healthy. Derwin James, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen all out in this game. And they're playing the Giants, so none of it mattered. They had 289 yards and 18 first downs in the first half alone. This Giants team is terrible. I don't know how the Eagles lost to them. Dave Gettleman is almost certainly a lock to be gone at this point. I think the biggest question left is Joe Judge going to follow him out the door? And it sounds like he's not, which is great news for other NFC East teams because Joe Judge is a fraud. And if you want some proof, the Giants are out there calling timeouts down 24 with 2 minutes left. Like, Joe Judge is literally that guy in your Madden league that you hate playing because the game is over and he's sitting there calling timeouts trying to score so he loses by 17 instead. Well, congratulations, Joe Judge. You guys lost by 16 points instead of 24. I hope that looks good on your wall next to the we should have made the playoffs as 6-10 last year.
Yeah, you said it would be great for Eagles fans if Joe Judge gets to keep his job, and that's absolutely true. Now that Gettleman's gone, I've always said if any of the three pillars of the current Giants organization are there, it's bad for the Giants and they will not make the playoffs and they will not be a successful organization. You won't be a successful organization with Gettleman as your GM. You won't be successful as an organization with Joe Judge as your head coach. And you definitely won't be successful as an organization with Daniel Jones, your quarterback. So the best thing that could happen to Eagles, Cowboys, Washington fans that are rooting for the Giants to fail is for them to use both of those first-round picks this year and to not take a quarterback, to proceed with Daniel Jones, to not go get an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or a Kenny Pickett or someone in the draft. That is the best-case scenario. And maybe Daniel Jones being out with that neck injury, and I'm sure he's not going to play again this season, maybe that's something where if he would have played the rest of the year, he would have gotten some stink on him and it would have tainted him a little bit in the eyes of the new GM. Hopefully him being out, maybe, that's something. It's like, oh, well, we were only 4-6 in games he played. And hopefully they're able to talk themselves into Daniel Jones for next year because they will not be successful with him at the helm.
Agreed. Okay. Detroit.
Also, Justin Herbert was awesome in that game. And I will just say Jalen Guyton is a good player. I was saying it last year. He's a receiver for the Chargers. I was saying it last year. He made some catches last year when he was like a third, fourth, fifth receiver for them, and they just brought him in because they were having COVID issues and injury issues. He would always make one deep play per game, and sometimes it would get a PI or the throw wouldn't be there, but he always gets open deep. They're finally starting to use him, and it's a huge addition to the offense because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for a long time were kind of their only weapons, and then obviously they used Austin Eckler a ton. If Jalen Guyton's like a legit take the top off the defense option, that offense can be pretty scary. I still just don't buy into them because their defense has no teeth.
Justin Herbert's the most valuable player in the NFL.
Wow.
Not saying he's winning the MVP, saying he's the most valuable player. He is the best quarterback in the league on a rookie contract. That makes him the most valuable player. Most important position. We know having a guy on a rookie contract is the most important thing. And I don't think there's anybody you can argue on a rookie contract is a better quarterback.
Kyler.
Maybe.
Kyler's better.
Although I'm not going to lie, I actually thought he was off of his, but he's not. Is he? I'm going to look it up while you talk about Detroit and Denver.
Well, that's a hard task to do. I don't know.
I can type fast. Yes. So he's okay. So Murray has signed a 4-year.
Okay.
I don't know. Wait, that's his rookie deal. 4-year, 35 minutes. So yeah. Murray's got 1 year left after this year. So okay. I'd still take Herbert, but
you take Herbert over Kyler.
I stand by it. Herbert's my guy.
Wow, you would take Herbert over Kyler. That is shocking to me.
Let's go. And Kyler's even got the OU connection.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's shocking. I would take Kyler, and I'm not even a big.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Mike is unplugged. I'm so shocked right now.
Okay. But I mean, you should mute yourself if you're about to say bad things about Herbert, but
my mic got unplugged. I'm so shocked about that Kyler Murray diss from an Oklahoma Sooner here. I mean, I would take Burrow. You know that. I would take Burrow over Herbert. That's something I'll always hold strong on until it's proven wrong beyond the shadow of a doubt. I'm trying to think. Like, I would still argue that having Patrick Mahomes on any salary is still like the most valuable thing because of the floor it gives you. But yeah. I get that you could kind of make the same argument. You could say Herbert gives you a slightly lower floor with so much more. I totally get the argument.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we just know with roster construction, having a guy on that rookie deal is such a huge deal, especially with what quarterbacks make now. I mean,
So,
it's why the Browns shouldn't go pay Baker. He's not the guy, and to pay him like that guy is going to hamstring you. You gotta, if you're going to pay the guy, you got to be absolutely sure that he's it. The Eagles botched that with Carson Wentz, and I mean, they're going to be able to get out of it because they cut bait basically on this season and took all the cap hits. But imagine if they didn't trade him and they were sitting here just having to play that contract out, how much worse that would be. So,
will the Chargers win a Super Bowl with Justin Herbert during his rookie contract? So that's what, 3 years? The next 3 years?
Fifth year option counts?
I'll say the next 4 years, including this year.
Yes.
You think they will? Okay. I don't think they do. I don't think they will.
No is the better bet because, I mean, the odds of any team winning a Super Bowl are pretty low. But
I think if you could get odds on this, I think it'd be like plus 150. I don't think the odds would be crazy because if you're just thinking about it from a logical standpoint, they're probably plus 1,500 or something like that right now. And you have to think that they're never going to be lower than that going forward because he's only going to get better. So, I don't think it's this. I think it's actually like a fair argument, both sides. That's something you can use out there at a bar if you're in a football argument or want an interesting topic. That's interesting. I'm going to ask people that. I'm going to put up a Twitter. I'm going to put up I think that's a fun Twitter poll.
I remember that was a whole thing when, I'm in Oklahoma, when the Thunder had Harden, Durant, and Westbrook. People on sports radio, like they were like, would you be happy if the Thunder only get out of it with one ring? And everybody was like, no. And of course they didn't even get one ring. And that was always the argument. Like, how many rings do they have to win for this to be successful? And everybody's like 2 or 3, and they didn't even get one. But
it's the same. It's kind of the same thing with the process in Philly with what deems the process a success, and is it rings or is it competing? So, I totally understand where you're coming from there.
All right, let's move on. We've chased a lot of rabbit trails today.
That's
impressive. You can tell we haven't podcasted together in a few days. We got a lot of random topics to get off our chest. So we'll power through a few of these more quickly here. Detroit at Denver. Denver wins 31-10. TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift were both out for the Lions. They really just need to shut Swift down. He's got shoulder issues going on. There's nothing to be gained at this point by playing him at not 100%. I think they need to shut him down. Denver wins behind a strong running game and defense, basically doing everything they can to minimize Teddy Bridgewater, formerly known as Teddy the Elite, before that known as Teddy Two Gloves on this podcast. So we've done the full roundabout with Teddy Bridgewater this season.
Which team in this matchup is more upset that they didn't take Justin Fields or Mac Jones?
Oh, gosh.
It's Detroit, right? It's got to be Detroit. Because at least if you're Denver, you can say we're 7-6 and Surtain is like contributing to that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, quarterback has hamstrung Detroit far worse than it has Denver, and the guy Denver picked looks to be really good. So, and I mean, you could argue the second most important position to have an elite player at is cornerback, and so they at least managed to get an elite cornerback.
If you're Detroit, you cannot feel great about an offensive lineman who hasn't looked exceptional when you have, Jared Goff playing quarterback. And now you're going to be the number 1 pick again in a draft where you're probably going to take a defensive end. You're probably going to be taking Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson. Probably Aiden Hutchinson, to be honest, just with the Michigan connection. I could see that being Hutchinson. Yeah. That's pretty rough. That's pretty rough. Like, they're not going to have a quarterback again next year now. Probably.
Jared Goff, baby.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a Jalen Hurts destination if the Eagles move on somewhere else, or maybe that's a different type of destination. Who knows what Detroit's going to do next year for quarterback.
All right, moving on. San Francisco at Cincinnati. San Francisco wins 26-23. Joe Burrow goes 25 of 34 for 348 yards and 2 touchdowns with no picks. Your guy, Joe Burrow. but they handed the ball off 22 times to running backs for 69 total yards against a 49ers defensive front that's really solid, and they have no cornerbacks. Zach Taylor said, you know what? Our quarterback is hot. He's playing great. Let's keep handing the ball off for 2.8 yards per carry. Like, Zach Taylor has got to be on the hot seat. I mean, he should have been on the hot seat a long time ago, but I understand that Mixon is a good player and that he's been running well. I don't understand how you can look at this matchup and be so committed to the running game, particularly when your quarterback's playing so well.
And this is after last week when they played the Chargers, who can't stop the run, and they refused to run the ball to open the game. They were throwing the ball all over the yard, and they had turnovers, and they got down big early. And that's what ended up getting them again, because they got down big early against San Francisco. I mean, they went to overtime, so what ended up getting them is what you mentioned, being way too conservative. They got down into the red zone, first down run, second down run, third down pass, and they weren't able to convert it on third down. And then you take a field goal, San Fran's able to go get a touchdown with the new overtime rules. Zach Taylor coached that game like a coward. Mm-hmm. And I think it says a lot that the last 2 weeks against good teams, neither the Chargers or 49ers are Super Bowl contenders, really, but against good teams that'll be in the playoffs, Zach Taylor came out with a completely inadequate game plan to open the game. You can tell a lot by the coach with how they script those opening drives, because those are what you focus on, and those are what you can control and what you can plan for more than anything else. Beyond that, that's just adjusting, and that's rolling with the punches, and that goes back to preparation. But when you see this coach making the wrong decision on how to game plan early in games, back-to-back weeks, I think it says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the 49ers end, they win. They're going to make the playoffs, but they've got no pass defense. And so they're not going to do anything when they get there.
Yeah. I do think they could get hot here down the stretch, and maybe they turn into the team that you don't want to face, but I don't really see a path for them to really make it to the championship game or the Super Bowl or anything like that. Maybe they can sneak in a playoff win if they get Arizona or Dallas or something like that.
All right, moving on. 3 games left. Buffalo at Tampa Bay. Tampa wins 33-27. They jump out to an early lead and then let Buffalo back into it, blowing a 21-point lead. My main takeaway from this game, though, is that the Bills have taken the whole running backs don't matter thing entirely too far. Yeah. They had 7 handoffs this entire game versus 66 dropbacks. They had not one handoff in the entire first half, and they only scored 3 points. There becomes a place where there are diminishing returns on constructing your entire roster around never running the ball. And so, yes, passing is better than running. There has to be a semblance of balance. You cannot pass the ball 66 times versus 7 handoffs and expect to win games against NFL football teams. You can try it in high school when you've got the most talented team in the state. This isn't going to work at the NFL level, and they've really pushed this way too far.
The Bills are missing the playoffs. I really think it's a thing that we have to think about, and the thing that can happen. They're absolutely done in that division. The Patriots, Tom Brady just wrapped up the AFC East for the New England Patriots. In my opinion, with that win for the Bucs. And what that win for the Bucs does is it allows the Bucs probably to finish this year 14-3. You look at their schedule to finish the year, and it's incredibly easy. This was really the last tough game for Tampa Bay. And I think that Tampa's going to get rolling in these last 4 games against bad competition. And I think we're really trending towards Tampa and Green Bay in the championship game in a rematch from last year. And it's hard not to like Tampa's chances with that roster. And you saw it in this game. I know that they let Buffalo back in the game, but that just seemed like game flow to me and a couple fluky things. People are freaking out about the officiating. People are freaking out about that Stephon Diggs DPI or that didn't get called. Seemed like Stephon Diggs was kind of fighting. In my opinion, it seemed like that was going both ways. Now I do get that the Bucs then got kind of a ticky-tack DPI in overtime that people were upset about since they didn't get the one earlier. But I thought the Bucs deserved to win this game, and they obviously did.
So speaking of fluky things and speaking of the Packers, Chicago travels to Green Bay. Green Bay wins 45-30, but Green Bay's special teams has got to be a big area of concern. They allowed a 97-yard punt return touchdown, 42-yard punt return, a 41-yard kickoff return. They had a kickoff go out of bounds, and then they muffed a punt of their own. And that's that can't happen in the playoffs. If you want to make a run, you can give the Bears that and not lose the game. You can't give the Buccaneers that and not lose that game. And so the Packers got to get that figured out.
That first half was fun. That first half was fun Sunday Night Football. And you saw a lot of glimpses of what Justin Fields can be. I do think that Justin Fields showed a lot of those like kind of things that people were so high on. People like, I mean, you were obviously a huge Justin Fields guy. I'm a big fan of his. I think he can be really good going forward as well. And I think that there's a lot that he showed in that. Obviously, he had some turnovers and he had some bad plays as well that I don't think you can necessarily chalk up to him. I think you can chalk it up to a lot of other reasons as to why the Bears are not a great operation offensively. But credit to Justin Fields for doing what the Bears haven't done in a long time, which was be respectable in a game against Green Bay. It seems like usually they get blown out 45-14 and it's 21-0 right away. The Bears hung in this game, and the Bears, I mean, it did take probably some fluky plays and some special teams stuff, but credit to the Bears for hanging in this game for as long as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Fields did look better. He only got sacked twice in this game. Tevin Jenkins played in place of Jason Peters, and he was somehow worse. He got 4 penalties, and so Tevin Jenkins not looking good, like a good second-round pick there for the Bears.
I thought he was a first.
Didn't he drop to second?
Maybe I just had him in my head as a first-round prospect.
He was 39th overall. He had some injury red flags that ended up dropping him that I don't think people like us didn't know about that. Yeah, the NFL people did, which seems to happen every year. Justin Reed several years ago, was getting major first round hype, and he fell to like the 3rd or 4th round, and turns out he had big concussion issues nobody knew about. So there's always some of that, but it was back issues that Jenkins had.
There's another O lineman like that. It's not coming to my brain. I can't remember where it was like, oh, that guy was going to be a top 10 pick, and then he ended up going round 2, round 3. I can't remember.
Yeah. All right, on to the Monday Night Football game. The Rams traveled to Arizona, and they win 30-23. So this is a big bounce-back game for a Rams team that struggled mightily before their bye. And it's impressive that they did it without Jalen Ramsey, Tyler Higbee, Darrell Henderson, or Rob Havenstein. I think all of them were out with COVID. I know they were all out. I think it was COVID for all of them. So COVID's becoming a major storyline now. Kyler Murray threw 2 picks. The offense was generally out of sorts, despite some big numbers for Murray. That last play of the game just looked comical. Like, how do you no huddle up there and then leave a guy totally unblocked off the edge? And I know Murray can't just take a sack or anything like that, but it just looks so comical, him trying to decide which way to spin with that guy chasing him.
To your point on COVID, I saw a stat from Mark Sessler from the Around the NFL pod. If anyone doesn't listen to that, you should go check that out. It's a great NFL podcast. But Mark Sessler said that 302 players missed games last year due to COVID. We are now at 289 missed games due to COVID this year. So it might feel like way less of a factor, but I guess it really hasn't been. I guess it's been going on the whole year. But right now it really does feel like there is a huge spike going on in the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, all across sports. So hopefully, nothing too serious to cancel any games in the NFL. So that'll be something that we definitely have to keep tabs on. But I think that the biggest takeaway from this game is that the Arizona Cardinals are not a Super Bowl contender. They just aren't to me. And I never really fell into that trap of thinking that they were. But, I also don't want to overreact to this game and say, oh, everything with the Rams is fixed and they're back to being a Super Bowl contender, because they were my Super Bowl favorite. They were my pick to win the Super Bowl. But I still, even watching that game last night, I didn't walk away thinking, oh, they can compete with the Bucs and the Packers in a big game. I still don't feel like that. And if anything, this game just more so strengthened that the Cardinals aren't in that tier than made me think that the Rams are in that tier, if that makes sense.
I've got a question for you. Do the Cardinals even want home field advantage in the playoffs? They've won 7 straight road games by double digits. but they've lost 3 home games this year. I mean, if I'm if I'm Arizona, maybe we just want to phone it in these last few weeks, make sure we're playing road games all the way to the Super Bowl.
Hell, if I'm Atlanta, I might want to phone it in these last couple of weeks and get rid of Matt Ryan and get a better pick. But I digress. Arizona, they're road warriors. It's crazy. I do think that those losses at home were to good teams. I think it's like the Rams, the Packers, and another good team that I'm forgetting. But
they will have a chance to break the NFL record with an 8th straight road victory by double digits if they are able to beat, wait for it, the Detroit Lions by 10 plus this week. So they're about to set an NFL record. So I guess you heard it here first on this podcast. If you are an NFL football team that starts with an A and has a bird for a mascot, you need to just phone it in and lose some games to end this season.
Yeah, I like that. I also heard that I think that I wish I had this stat perfectly correct, but I think with the games that were like bird versus cat teams this weekend, it is now I think it's like 411 to 409 in favor of birds. So hopefully the Eagles can keep that going when they face a cat team soon. I don't know who the next cat on the schedule is. I don't know if they have another one.
What is the record for bird teams against football teams?
I like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to about wrap up our review show here. Mark, do you have any final thoughts you want to get out there?
You go first. Let me ruminate on mine for a second.
Right. Well, my final thought is that I'm going to throw my QB tiers that I did solo up here on the screen, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to tell me what I'm wrong about.
Oh, I like that.
So I don't know if you saw them when I tweeted it out later, but here it is.
I didn't.
All right, good. So I get your off-the-cuff response here. So I divided into elite, great, above average, average, below average, and backups. And then I had a separate thing for rookies. I refused to put rookies on a tier based on 14 games. So rookies are kind of on their own. But here we go. I'm going to put it up here, and you can tell me why I'm wrong. So here we go.
That's fair. You lost me for a second, but I'm back.
Okay.
Could you zoom in can you zoom in a little bit?
Let me see here. It doesn't look. Actually, it looks like when I zoom in, it makes it smaller. So let's see if I zoom out and it makes it bigger.
Here, let me pull it up. Let me pull it up on my own. Sorry to anyone listening live.
Here, all right, so I'll read some out here for you. Oh, it's because it's blowing up the actual tweet. So on the elite tier, I have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott. On the great tier, I put Kyler, and these are not in any particular order. By the way, it's just as I drug them up there. So not necessarily saying Brady's better than Mahomes or anything like that. But on the great tier, I have Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Above average, Joe Burrow, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford. Average was Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy G, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Tua, Baker Mayfield, and Jameis Winston. Then below average, Teddy, Ben Roethlisberger, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke. And then backups, Trevor Siemian, Andy Dalton, Sam Darnold, and Jared Goff.
All right, so let's just eliminate backup and rookie in terms of takes. I think Brady, Rodgers, and Mahomes are kind of in their own tier as 3. I don't think Dak is in a different tier than Kyler, Herbert, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Wilson. I think I would probably put Dak in that great tier, and I would move Burrow and Wilson from above average to great. I don't have any big problems with those, though. And then, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, I think that's fair. And then we get to the average tier. This is probably where I have my biggest problem. And you'll be surprised. I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts guy or anything. I think Jalen Hurts is the most disrespected guy on this graphic. How about that?
Interesting.
I think he is, because I don't think you can make an argument right now that Baker and Jameis are better than him. I think Jalen does more on the ground than those guys do in the air. I think what Jalen does, and also I'm not going to get into a whole Baker Mayfield conversation because it does seem like his guys had his back when that whole thing happened. But I wouldn't want to have to root for a team that Baker Mayfield was the quarterback of personally at this point. And I think Jalen's better than Matt Ryan at this point too. I don't think Matt Ryan's very good. So I would put Jalen in this tier with Tannehill, Garoppolo, Wentz, Cousins, Tua. And I would downgrade Baker, Ryan, and Winston. Also, I think Daniel Jones is a backup. I don't even think he should be in the below average. Also, Ben Roethlisberger might be elite after that game on Thursday night. I might be back in on Ben Roethlisberger. So I'll end it.
Don't do it.
I'll end it on a joke. But no, I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty close to what I would do. Yeah, like I said, my biggest problem was the Jalen Hurts. And I guess you could say I think Russ. I'm surprised Russ was this low.
Yeah, I think I'm concerned about that. If I was doing this list now, I might put him up a category. I was concerned about fall off, and I think he's showing that it's mostly injury related, and he's been durable for his career. So little concern. I think I talked about that on the podcast. It's hard to separate. Is he falling off or is it just injury? And I think I'm more confident now it was just injury and he's coming back from it. So I think if I redid that today or definitely at the end of the year, I think he'd probably bump up a little bit. But
yeah, I'm starting to think I might have Kyler as the fourth best quarterback in football. I'd have to think about it, but it's like, yeah, I'd probably rather have Kyler than Allen. I'd probably rather have Kyler than Lamar. I'd probably rather have Kyler than Dak. I'm like sitting here thinking about it. I guess I'm bigger on Kyler Murray than I thought, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of my takeaway from the QB tiers. My final thoughts will be that was good. I like that. I'll think about my own. The reason I hadn't looked at it yet was because I knew that I wanted to spend like legitimate time analyzing it and thinking about it. So I never got the chance to.
So I sprung it on you and gave you 2 minutes.
No, that was good though. That was good. I'm gonna look more at it for sure.
Yeah, I talked through them all as I placed them on that podcast. But yeah, that's the list. Yeah, it's interesting to try to place those guys though. In all seriousness, I mean, we watch these guys independently and then trying to place them into buckets. And then I didn't try to order them within those tiers, but it's an interesting exercise. So I'd be interested in any of you guys that are listening. If you want to fire off your quarterback takes, you can at me or you can go find that tweet and do it. I'd be interested to see how you guys perceive those people. And you're right. I mean, Kyler is definitely up there. He's almost as good, in fact, as this will surprise a lot of people, but he's almost as good as Justin Herbert.
It's shocking to me. It's shocking.
All right, let's get out of here. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 32 of Chalk Talk. It was good to be back to a normal show, a normal review show. Hopefully we'll get you guys a normal preview show here as we head into the holidays and things I'm sure will get a little crazy. But if you enjoy what you heard on the show, be sure you smash that subscribe button or that like button wherever you're watching so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handles are right down here below. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.